you still sell on Etsy in 2020, or is it too saturated? I feel like I get asked this all the time. Every year I'm making videos on this, or every year after Etsy make a change. Can you still sell on Etsy? Is it oversaturated? Isn't it just too hard? With all the changes, shouldn't we just leave? And it's so much harder than it used to be. We had a quick conversation about this on my live stream. Every Sunday at 4 PM UK time. So I thought I would run some numbers, crunch some data and dispel some myths as to why I think it is still possible to sell on Etsy. So firstly, it's so much harder than it was. Well, let me take you back a bit. I started on Etsy in 2008. Now, if I could take me back just now to 2008 with what I know, with the equipment I have, with the skill set I have, absolutely I could do awesome on Etsy in 2008. But even back then, it was completely normal for the majority of new sellers to take months to make sales. It took me 3 or 4 months. It took my mum, who opened a shop at the same time, about 6 months to make sales. And we've both opened a second shop in the past couple of years, and we both made our first sales on those second shops much faster than we did in our first shops in 2008. And so, although things like SEO seemed easier back then, most people also had no idea about it. There weren't the same YouTube videos giving you tutorials. There wasn't the same advice blogs. There was very little out there to help you. And also, Etsy didn't give you articles like the ultimate guide that they've given us recently. We were left floundering on our own. I am sure a few people came in that had expertise in sales and marketing and SEO, and they did fantastic, just like they do now. But back then, most of us didn't have a clue. We had less of a clue than the average person has now. And on top of that, social media was so much newer. Our online footprint was much less. We knew less about marketing ourselves on social media. Sure, people said, make a Facebook page. And at that time, it was easier to get views from a Facebook page. But we didn't know what we were doing marketing our Facebook pages. We didn't have the thousands of friends on Facebook. People didn't even really know that much about selling online, so it wasn't even so easy to sell to your friends. Most people knew less about photography. There would be the few experts with those expensive cameras, but for most of us, what we had as a camera was fairly rubbish. What 90% of us have got as a mobile phone now takes way better, way higher quality photos than we could ever dream of back in the day. There was such a clear difference between professional photographs and amateur photographs that there isn't so much now. So many people can take amazing photographs just with a decent bit of lighting and their mobile phone. And talking of SEO, let me tell you about the SEO back in 2008 on Etsy. The number one single most important metric was how new the item was, how recently it had been posted or relisted. So if you wanted on the front page, you had to renew your listing, you had to relist your listing. There were people who hired people to constantly relist their listings all day long. And more often than not, people's relisting fees were way higher than anything they were making from selling the item. Added to that, when there was no filter on the front page for quality of what items shoppers saw, the front page was awful. More often than not, people would come and look to buy something, couldn't find it, and they would leave Etsy. So sales were less anyway. People were less likely to come back, and less people had heard of Etsy, so there were much, much less buyers on the platform. So it was definitely no easier back then. That was the Wild Wild West. We were learning as we were going. And it was definitely a struggle. It's just too saturated. Now, I'm going to link to a video that a friend just shared with me just when I was writing this script, which explains it all perfectly to me. Don't fear being in the saturated place. Yes, there are a lot of sellers, but there are many more times buyers. And also it gives us an idea of our proof of concept. Can you sell the kind of item that you create here? Yes, because other people are doing it. Now, is it too saturated? Yeah, sure. If you decide you want to just sell jewellery and don't think any further than that, the chances of you ranking for the term jewellery, getting spotted and making sales for the term jewellery, yeah, not very much. However, many Etsy sellers know nothing about keyword research. So if you research your keywords, you find the items that buyers are searching for. So there's a demand, but there's not that many people making it, so there's less supply, then you can do great. And Etsy just last week announced their 2019 results. So we've got some actual data here. In 2019, there were 45 million buyers on Etsy and 2.5 million sellers. So that's 18 times the number of buyers to sellers. And not only that, we don't know the number of active sellers on Etsy. Many people open an Etsy shop thinking it's going to be easy, and they give up before their first sale or before their first few sales. So any seller number is going to be skewed so much. The majority of sellers on Etsy are sellers who are just about to give up. And Etsy told us in 2019 the number of active buyers were up 20% on 2018. So buyers are still growing. The name, the brand of Etsy is getting out there more with buyers. And the actual sales on Etsy were up for the year to almost $5 billion. $4.98 billion in sales for the year. And sure, that sounds like $1,990 per person, but that's not how it works. From other data I've seen in other years, 95% of sellers on Etsy make at or below the average. So that means the weight of sellers who are not selling anything skews the data way down low. So it's actually not as hard as you think to be in that top 5% of sellers making significantly more than the average. And from surveys, 65% of sellers on Etsy say they're only on here to make supplemental income. They're not here building their business. They're not here wanting this to be their main income. Now, if we think about the competition, there's not actually that much out there, no matter how you might feel otherwise. I asked you guys, the community, what you thought of when you thought of some platforms. Just off the top of your head, little sound bites for them, and I asked eBay, Amazon and Etsy, what you thought of them, and resoundingly what people think, what they go to these platforms for. You go to eBay for cheap, you go to Amazon for quick, and you go to Etsy for handmade. That's the branding, that's what people think of. So when you're thinking of alternatives, you might have heard of other places like New Monday, Folksy or Amazon Handmade. But ask your friends who don't sell on Etsy, ask your friends who are not sellers, what platforms they've heard of to buy on, or more importantly, what places they buy on for handmade. Most non-sellers haven't heard of most of the platforms you consider competition. So for a platform, it doesn't matter that there aren't many sellers there. If there aren't many buyers there, you're not going to sell anything. But let's run the little numbers that we've got. So Amazon Handmade makes sense as kind of one of the biggest chances at competition for Etsy because it's got a big company behind it. And to be honest, it's hard to get data just for Amazon Handmade. A lot of the results are rolled into the Amazon itself data. But of course, equally, handmade items can show up in regular Amazon searches, although they are competing with massive drop shippers, so I don't know how much they do show up. Amazon tell us they have around 1 million items in Amazon Handmade. Now compare that to Etsy's 60 million items. Granted, some of those are supplies and vintage, but 60 times more. So one of the reasons a lot of these new platforms don't just take off is it's a vicious circle. There's just not enough items when a potential buyer comes and searches, so they don't find what they're looking for in their search, so they don't purchase, so there's not that many sales. So the sellers leave the site because they're not making sales. So there's less items for the new buyers to see when they stumble across the site. So it's a spiral downwards that these places just don't do so well. There's not enough choice for the buyers. Don't always think of Etsy as being super saturated. Think of it as giving super choice. So there's more chance for a buyer to find what they're looking for, and there's more chance for a buyer to come back again and again and tell their friends, and for the platform to grow, which it is doing from the numbers Etsy give us. 20% in active buyers is amazing. eRank has actual data for the numbers of people searching on Etsy, Amazon, Handmade and many other places. And if we look at something simple and obviously handmade like personalised gift, average monthly search for that on Etsy is 96,000 searches. On Amazon it's 1,800. And on Amazon Handmade it's so small as to be statistically insignificant. And let's think of other terms. Mother's Day. On Etsy, that's 98,000 average searches. On Amazon Handmade, it's 306. And this is generally the case across the board. For some of these big search terms, Etsy gets the most customers searching for these terms by many factors above Amazon Handmade, and actually quite often many factors above what Amazon is, unless you're looking for things like electricals, which you shouldn't really be selling on Etsy in general. But anyway, for all this running the numbers, there's another way we can look. If Etsy is so hard to get sales on, then there'll be no new shops doing well that are just opened. I can actually look at the top sellers of shops that opened in 2020. That's only 2 months that these shops are the max that these shops can have been opened for. Now, obviously, I don't have the data to look at this and say if these shop owners have opened shops before or if they're marketing experts or anything about them, but it's just to tell us, can a new shop do really well in 2020? There's already 15 new shops that have had over 1,000 sales. I mean, okay, yes, at this volume, those shops that we're looking at are likely patterns, print on demand, or things that are easily reproducible. They're not necessarily handmade, but it shows new shops can come in and make sales and make them quickly. So, should you leave Etsy? If you don't like spending time on Etsy, if you find running your shop's interface too complicated, if you don't like shopping on Etsy and you prefer a different platform, if you shop on a different platform, then perhaps you should focus your efforts there. It's easier to grow on a platform you're comfortable because, to put it quite simply, you're going to have to spend a lot of time on whatever platform you choose building your shop. I already have a video on where is the next Etsy. You should probably check that out. But bear in mind, don't leave Etsy because it's making changes. Every single platform has to make changes. They will make changes, and those changes will be for the good of the platform, not the individual seller. They'll be there to make money for the platform as a whole. They are all businesses, so don't chop and change because one change happened. Don't keep trying to jump onto the new shiny. It takes time to build on any platform, so you're going to have to find the one you want to use and stick with it for a period of time. Roll with the punches. And also these latest changes, they're not in effect yet. We don't know the impact of them. So don't jump ship before you see what the changes are. I said this last year. I'm going to say it again. It might not be anywhere near as bad as you fear. In fact, it's likely not to be. Give whatever platform you're on a chance. Growth often online is exponential, so although you might not be feeling you're getting a whole lot of results just now, if you quit at this minute, you might have just been on the start of your upturn. And basically you'll be going back and starting again. I've shown my graphs before, but I nearly quit Etsy a number of years back, but I decided to stick with it, dig my heels in, do the SEO, and I've grown year on year since. So thankfully I didn't quit when I was just steps away from gold. But you don't have to be loyal to the platform. We don't have to be Etsy loyalists. We're using the platform for our own benefit. So while it works for us, stay with it. But Take your time to diversify, build different ways to contact your customers, build different revenue streams, learn what things work, test the market. Again, don't try and do all the things at once. A mailing list, 16 social media platforms, 4 different other shops. Every single one of these things, if they're worth it, take a lot of effort to get off the ground. So build your one shop wherever it's going to be. Work on that. And one other thing, build them up and take the time on them until they get to a level that they're kind of on autopilot, that they're kind of easy, and then work on the next thing. And don't panic, don't freak out. Change is going to happen. And if we roll with it and work with it, we can still grow. I hope that helped. See you next time.